Hello, thank you for tuning in today. I will be discussing how AI technology will be impacting film production. Before we jump in, I want to clarify that there is a monumentous amount of technology that is really impacting almost every aspect of the industry currently. So with that said, let's jump right into it. We are already seeing some uses in pre-production, specifically with concept art for pre-visualization. This is great for story bibles or pitch decks. It's making a huge headway in higher quality with more accuracy. You can see some examples I've made through Mid-Journey, and you can see some of my own examples and concepts for animated film ideas I have for the future. Just different things that will be a lot easier to show to people and explain what it is I am imagining. Moving on, we can see how this is impacting even casting. Directors are able to put headshots through a program which uses objective data on factors such as facial symmetry, emotion recognition, and attractiveness, and the analysis will help directors identify actors who fit specific character descriptions that they're looking for. And of course, some benefits of this is that the AI can analyze countless headshots at a breakneck pace, essentially, thus saving time and also identifying actors from diverse backgrounds, and of course, creating a more enhanced accuracy in finding people who fit specific character descriptions. The drawbacks to it is that there's a potential for error. There's a lack of nuance in the sense that an AI bot cannot read all the little small things that we as human beings can read in one another. And of course there's ethical concerns about this, being that it'd be invasive in privacy, might discriminate against others, and of course fairness. Moving on into screenwriting, we have essentially reached the point where ChatGPT can basically write a script for you. But essentially, this is something that the Writers Guild of America has said they're not necessarily against amid concerns of the bots taking over screenwriter positions. What their main concern is to essentially allow screenwriters to use AI technology as a tool in the sense that you would use Final Draft or a pencil. And this would be more that the bot would write the framework for a script, and then the person or screenwriter can come in and tune it where necessary. And that would save a lot of time coming up with details where the screenwriter could focus in on the meatier aspects of screenwriting. In VFX and animation, there are a multitude of directions that the AI technology is developing. There is something called deep learning, meaning a character model is basically put through a program in which they learn how to move and behave the way a person would move and behave.
Physics simulation has revolutionized how we animate physical phenomena like cloth and fluids. But animating characters remains a manual and tedious process. Traditional animation techniques tend to produce stiff and unresponsive behaviors. We are using reinforcement learning to develop more lifelike and responsive physically simulated characters. Our character learns to perform lifelike motions by imitating human motion data, such as walking, running, and sword swings. Our character is put through an intense training regimen for 10 years in simulation. Thanks to NVIDIA's massively parallel GPU simulator, this just takes 3 days of real-world time. The character then learns to perform a large variety of motor skills. Once the character has been trained, it can use those skills that it has learned to perform more complex tasks. Here, the character is trained to run to a target object and knock it over. We can also steer the character to walk in different directions like you would with a game character. Our model allows the character to automatically synthesize lifelike responsive behaviors to new situations. We can also control the character using natural language commands. For example, we can tell the character to do a shield bash or swing its sword. We hope this technology will eventually make animating simulated characters as easy and seamless as talking to a real actor.
Deep fake dubs. This is something that I personally would be most excited for, being someone who lived in Germany for a huge portion of my life. Going to the theater to see a Hollywood film wasn't all that fun. And that's, of course, there's obviously cultural barriers that essentially cannot be changed, but I think that globally this can reach people a lot more easily by dubbing the pre-existing footage to where the mismatched, jarring movements of the mouth can now fit the new voice actor's dub upon the actor's original face. Of course, there are concerns with deepfakes. We've already heard pretty horrifying stories of people deepfaking prominent figures in media on questionable subject matter such as pornographic material, or there's a lot of concern with this in particular. There's also the concern of even replacing actors. Would we even really need them, especially post-mortem? Which, of course, there's the ethical question of if an actor is dead, is it disrespectful to them to basically take samples of previous works they have done to basically rig them up in a computer versus having another actor portray them? There's a lot of murky waters around this, but in terms of dubs, I think this is something that is exciting. And of course, in rotoscope animation, there's a lot of potential for AI technology saving a ton of time, but could essentially eradicate in-betweeners' jobs. If you are unfamiliar with rotoscoping, this is basically when you take pre-existing footage and draw over it, kind of trace it, and create your own animation, making the movements a lot more realistic. But, at 24 frames per second, which can mean 1,440 drawings per minute, that can take studios years and years of work. So, with current upcoming technology, the animator can then focus on the keyframes, which are the most important heightened moments of animation, and the bot will take care of all the in-between movements from point A to point B, or keyframe 1 to keyframe 2. So this leads us to implications. As I've mentioned before, this presentation briefly touches on just a few options of where AI technology is taking us, but we can certainly see that there's a lot of possibility for quicker production pipelines. We can see that potentially we could pump out animated films at a much higher rate and at cheaper costs. There's also extremely valid fears swarming about the possibility of losing work for artists, which is an already competitive field. The question then that we face is, if films are heavily made using AI, is it even considered art anymore if the human touch is absent? At which point is it merely entertainment for consumption as an entertainment for entertainment's sake? And Del Toro famously does not like AI art. He says it's an insult to life itself, and he says, I consume and love art made by humans. But I think personally, as someone who is always for human expansion and reaching to the horizons, I think there's a lot of potential for good here, but I do think we must proceed cautiously. We need to proceed with the emphasis of AI technology being used as a tool and not as a replacement for the creatives that make things human. I think my main concern would be that we use AI technology as a crutch and that our creative muscles will then atrophy. And you can see how in previous films, a lot of innovation happens because story goes first and filmmakers are problem solvers. Filmmakers come up with amazing solutions to things. You can see in Star Wars, there was a lot of sound design innovation, or in Jurassic Park, also similarly sound design innovation and animation and animatronic innovation. And in animation in particular, we have seen that essentially new software has to be developed for every new film that is created as they continue to expand and push for realism. Hair in particular is something that animation has struggled with for years and years, just because computer models cannot seem to understand how hair behaves, and so new technology was constantly created from the innovation of humans. I think Encanto was the first animated film to depict every hair texture and type in one film at one time. So, with that being said, we should proceed with caution, but we should also be optimistic of the possibilities. So, I thank you for taking the time to watch with